Good afternoon and happy Mother's Day to you. Thanks for joining. I am Rose October with Arts, Culture, and Things in Between. Thank you for joining us again. Really appreciate that you're present. Last Sunday, I began this program as a collaboration with Talk of the Tongue Radio, headed by Michael Diabro. And my first guest was the Jamaican, Andrew Clark, who is an MC, an actor, and singer, the founder of Brata Productions. And I just wanted to say thanks to Andrew again, and to those of you who joined us. I plan bringing back Andrew, actually, because last week we had encountered some technical difficulties, and a lot of the good stuff that Andrew talked about you didn't get a chance to hear. So I have spoken with him about coming back, and he said yes. So I'll tell you when. So this week, added to the collaboration is RDE Pros, headed by Raul de Silva, who is responsible for us airing on the social platform of Zoom. We're coming to you through Zoom, actually, because of social distancing. You know, the things in between for arts, culture, and things in between is for me to get some leverage in looking at some of those social issues that. Let me tell you a little bit about arts, culture, and things in between. This is a program that features individuals who are gatekeepers of our arts and culture. They're not only performing artists, but also teachers and advocates, scholars who focus on the preservation of the arts and our culture. When arts is mentioned, it's being referred to as the different art forms. For example, the visual, the applied, and the performing arts. Visual, for example, meaning painting, sculpture, photography, or film. Applied, for example, architecture, as in designing and building and constructing any edifice. Fashion designing, which includes working with different types of patterns and fabrics. How about jewelry design, which includes working with materials such as wood, plastic, metal, silver, gold, in addition to the various types of stones. Furniture design, working with various types of woods, the ways that woods are cut and designed. And of course, literature, and we cannot forget dance. And I say dance with a smile on my face because the performing artist who is my guest today, I am so happy to have her on for many reasons that we'll talk about. But dance coming under the performing arts, that's another aspect of arts. And we're talking about music and photography, film, theater, opera, drama, singing, stand-up comedy. When I say culture, it generally means the way of life for a particular group of people. So for this program, it is inclusive to mean individuals' way of life, way of living. For example, looking at attitudes and behaviors. What is important to note, though, is that as culture is mentioned, I am really looking at how practices are passed from one generation to the next. Mm-hmm. The things in between, like I said, are the life's issues that affect the execution of the arts and the cultural practices. This involves both positive and negative experiences. So I think you've gotten a snapshot of what arts, culture, and things in between is about. And we'll take a quick break, and I'll come back with my guest for today, Candace Zachery, and you'll see a little snippet of Candace's work when we take a break. And when we come back, you'll get a chance to meet Candace, and we'll chat about stuff that she loves to do. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. That is Candace Thompson Zachery, live and direct in performance. Candace is based in Brooklyn and originally from Trinidad and Tobago. She is a dancer, choreographer, and cultural producer who is vested in the interest of our Caribbean dance and culture. She's the founder of Dance Caribbean Collective, an initiative that supports and presents Caribbean dance performances in New York City. She also produces her own choreographic work through the project Contempo Caribe. Let's welcome Candace to Arts, Culture, and Things in Between. Candace, you have me tongue twisting here, girl. I watch those moves and, you know, you're turning and twisting and so is my tongue.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I'm following in the footsteps of people like you, Rose. So, like, really honored to be here. And just glad to spread Caribbean culture everywhere I go. So thank you. I'm glad
I'm so happy to have you. And for those who don't know Candace, right? Because we all don't run in the same circles, obviously. Tell us, who is Candace Thompson Zachery?
So let's see. I've done a lot of work in the arts and in other fields. So I'll touch on a few. Of course, I'm a dancer, and you know, you just saw some of me performing, but also some of my choreography. I founded a collective that was called Dance Caribbean Collective when we started in 2015. And you'll hear more about that later. I'm also a certified personal trainer. So I've been doing personal training and fitness instruction since 2009 or something like that. I started teaching in college and then continued. And now, you know, I still actively train clients and teach classes. I'm also a teaching artist and an instructor. So I've done a lot of work doing soca, teaching dance, teaching Caribbean dance, modern, creative movement, you name it, I've taught it. Let's see, is there anything else? And more recently, I've been doing a lot of work in arts leadership and arts administration. And I'm currently working at Dance NYC as the manager of justice, equity, and inclusion. So
that's quite a mouthful. I couldn't even keep up. But I'll tell you some points that stick out for me. The first point that I want to ask you to elaborate more on, is the piece about being a fitness trainer. And I really think that's a smart move. I don't know why I didn't think about that back then when I was much younger, you know, but it makes sense because dance is so much about exercising. That's how we keep our body, that we call the instrument, you know, the way that it should be, and should be, so that it allows us to use it the way that it should be used. But I thought that what a really brilliant idea. And what I know about the work that you do with fitness, and I want you to talk about it, is how you've pushed the whole Caribbean flair when we talk
Yep.
about fitness. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so I got into teaching fitness. Well, I got into fitness in general in high school. My high school was St. George's College in Trinidad and Tobago. We had an aerobics competition every year. And so the year that I attended that school, I got involved in it and I ended up winning one of the competitions. And then when I went to college, I needed a job. And they saw on my resume that I was a part of this competition. So they're like, oh, you should teach in our wellness program. I'm like, sure. So you know how it goes. So I started as an assistant teacher really. And then they were like, if you get certified, we can pay you more. So then I got certified so I could get a little bump. And then, but also at the same time, because I was dancing and training in college, and I was injured a lot in my early years, I had to be on top of my physical regimen. And so teaching and doing all this, the studying for my certifications basically also helped my dance career because of how, the movement that I was doing was very physical. And so I was getting two things out of it. One, a livelihood. And then two, a way to maintain myself and stay safe and stay on top of the kind of, training that I needed to do to perform in the pieces that I had to perform. But then, in terms of fusing Caribbean culture and fitness instruction around 2014, I started teaching soca dance at Mark Morris. And because, if you know soca, a lot of it is very high energy, very, rigorous and powerful. I think people take to it because of that energy, but then also because it's a great aerobic workout, right? So you're moving a lot, it's very high intensity. So you're getting a way that you can enjoy yourself, a way that you can celebrate your heritage if you are West Indian or Caribbean, and then a way that you can basically take care of your body at the same time. So, yeah.
One of the things that especially dancers go through, I brought it to say most artists go through, the craft is done so effortless that those looking on think that they can do it too, right? And
part of the magic.
Yes, exactly. Forget about the years of training, forget about even becoming certified. I know that some people, they're lost for words when they hear that dancers go through a trajectory in terms of not so much the training that's a very important part of, and the caring of the body, the self-care that is important, critical, but the other aspects like becoming certified, getting a dance degree, and all of those important pieces that makes somebody like you whole. And it would take some education, educating those people to say, well, yes, this is how it is done. Hence one of the reasons I'm doing, arts, culture, and things in between. You also mentioned that you're a teaching artist. What is that about?
Teaching artist. So how long I've been doing that for a while, but I'm not doing it that much anymore. But basically, we go into schools and community centers and basically lead not educational, but artistic and creative practices. Sometimes it's about like a certain cultural form, or it's about getting the participants or students to express themselves, share their own stories. So I've been doing that with dance probably for about 10 years. So I've taught little ones, like 2 and 3 year olds, middle school, high school. I've done a lot of work with adults, seniors. So I've worked with different populations in tertiary level education. So I've taught master classes at universities. But teaching artist work is very special because when you're an educator, I think in like the traditional 8 to 2 kind of like Department of Education model, like you have certain models certain things that you have to hit, and when you're a teaching artist, I feel like it's to some extent less about like they have to learn this and this, and more about leading a practice, leading an experience, right? Because whoever it is has been through, their day job, their day school, and they basically, it's another way for people to tap into a different side of themselves. So I feel like teaching artists work, it's about using what you know and your skills and your knowledge and your practice in order to lead a creative experience to the people that you're working with. So it's both educational and creative and artistic.
What I really pay attention to with the whole creative piece the teaching artist brings to the school environment is the fact that the children are being exposed to different things. And for some, it would be quite a challenge because they don't know and they would find it funny. And I know that because I have many friends like you who would talk about some of the experiences that they would have. I've heard teaching artists who complain that some of the children are resistant to participating because of the difference in the music that they're not accustomed to.
Right.
So there is that breaking of the barrier that as a teaching artist, you have to also deal with.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that a bit?
Sure, yes. And I think, the more experience that I had with teaching, especially when I got hired to teach Caribbean dance specifically, is the more that I realized that apart from teaching about Caribbean dance or Caribbean culture, I had to teach students about just a general cultural appreciation.
Yes.
And dealing with people of different backgrounds, of different practices, of different ways of seeing and being in the world. So there's this story, I taught at a middle school, and we were doing, I was teaching a Jamaican dance called Dinky Mini. And if you know what the Dinky Mini dance is, it's kind of grotesque, and your knees are turned in, and so it is, to some extent, it looks funny, and part of the dance is that they are mimicking a certain kind of movement from an animal. So there's that. But I had one of the kids, I was trying to teach them the name of the step, and they had to repeat it back to me, and I'm like, okay, so say it back to me, and some person in the class yelled cockroach.
Wow.
Right? Because right, so they find they're challenged with something, like you're saying, they're challenged with something that they don't know. It sounds funny. They don't know how to deal with being uncomfortable in an experience where it's foreign. So what they do is they either make fun of it, or they lash out because they're just uncomfortable. They're like, I don't know what's happening. This is new. This is strange. And so a lot of what I had to do, and what I've had to do in situations like that, is just basically give people a framework from which to understand how to deal with something you don't know. So we would talk about, I'm like, okay, one of the principles in my class was respect for the culture. So what does that mean? It means taking what we're doing seriously, even if you feel strange, you feel funny, you feel awkward, you want to laugh, you want to giggle. There are times when that's appropriate and that's what's required as part of the practice. But there are times when it may look comical, but it's not, right? And so what we're doing here is learning about another country, another culture's lifestyle. And you learn it the same way you would learn math, or the same way you would learn English. And use that to let yourself understand the way that other people experience and deal with life, right? So the same way that, I don't know, at the end of the day, you go home and your parents make, I don't know, cornbread and whatever. Like somebody else's parents, they go home and they make roti, you know what I mean? So half of my job was just teaching about how to appreciate and deal with cultural differences before we even get to the Caribbean steps.
Exactly. And that's so important though, because diversity is key here. Understanding that we are all not alike. We don't look alike. And I think once it's being done from elementary school and throughout the educational system, it actually mushrooms to something bigger. And that bigger something is life. Understanding that there's so many different ways, like you said, to eat or to prepare a meal. to view others, that because someone looks different from you doesn't mean that something is wrong with that person. There's so many life's lessons that children can learn from teaching artists who go into the school and do the kind of work that you do, because the teachers, many of the teachers, they don't have the time and the ability to do what teaching artists do. So I wonder, quickly before we go to a break, what are your thoughts now? And this is just, I just thought of it. What are your thoughts now regarding what teaching artists are experiencing in the school system given COVID-19?
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of talk about just keeping their programs going. You know what I mean? Because it's easy to say, well, you know, we need to focus, we need to move our, you know, they've had to spend a lot of money on taking things online and remote, and, you know, it's easy to say, well, let's leave that art stuff behind. We'll deal with that after COVID. But at the same time, it's just like the art stuff, it's how we're all surviving this. Yeah. So it's where we're going home to watch Netflix. We're online at night looking at Jill Scott and Erykah Badu. Like the arts and the music and the dancing, and that's how we're processing these extreme situations that we're in right now. So, you know what I mean? If we, and I mean, we'll see how things go with how the city reacts to all of these things, but teaching artists, I believe, are even more essential now, right? Because those students are having a hard time doing remote learning, or maybe they're not, some aren't, but a lot of people are having a hard time managing remote learning, in being in a home where their parents are having to work or take care of kids, they're sharing computers. Like it's a lot that's happening. And the art practices that teaching artists bring and the creative practices that they bring are ways that people can tap back into themselves, can rejuvenate themselves to keep dealing with the pressures of what we're going through right now. So I feel like it must be hard, but I also am a strong advocate for the fact that in all of the things that we're doing, that teaching artists and artists need to be prioritized, because we can't think about what this world would look like without them.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is a good point for us to take a break, and we'll watch another clip of Candace. My guest today, for those of you who are just joining us, my guest today is Candace Thompson Zachery, who is everything that has to do with dance. There you have it. For Candace Thompson Zachery, my guests for today. Candace, where was that performance?
That was at the Mark Morris Dance Center on the 5th floor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Was that part of the collective, the dance collective? Was it that project?
Correct. Yes. Okay. So that was our New Traditions Festival in 2017.
Okay. All right, I thought I'd seen it. So you've been involved in many projects in different communities, and one of them is Dance Caribbean Collective.
Yep.
Let's talk about that.
So Dance Caribbean Collective was, it's, still ongoing, is a collective or an organization that I started in 2015 to bring together Caribbean dancers and educators and performers and choreographers, because I felt that a lot of us were working in different parts of the dance world or the performance world, and that there was not enough collaboration or connection between us. And so I founded this organization to bring us together, to create connections for people, but then also to create a bigger platform that could raise the level of visibility for all of our different works. And then I think one of the key parts of Dance Caribbean Collective was also the fact that we were actively trying to reach Caribbean audiences. We wanted to bring them to our shows to see the kind of work that we were doing, because I felt at least that there were a lot of Caribbean dancers who were doing work in various other communities. So they were doing work in the concert dance world, they were doing work in higher education, they were doing work in wherever they were, but there wasn't a central place where the Caribbean community could be the audience for some of these projects. And that's what I think really made Dance Caribbean Collective, that was like the organizing focus for it, to bring Caribbean dance and the people that were actually involved in keeping the scene alive in New York, bring them to Caribbean communities, or let both of us meet in the middle. And so we started in 2015. We had our first season at St. Francis College downtown. It was like a one-day show. It was well received. And then we went on to subsequently have a 2016 season that expanded to a 2-night festival, and we brought in dancers from not Jamaica, they were Jamaican, but they were from Canada and Wisconsin to present a work called Fisting Home, Love and Redemption. That was 2016. And then 2017 was when we did the New Traditions Festival, and the theme that year was Our Caribbean Spirit. And that's when we connected, Rose, and we did that feature on you, because we were trying to learn about the various cultural organizations in New York that were keeping certain Caribbean traditions alive. And we paired that with a community project that allowed about 7 dancers to collaborate on a piece that we premiered at the show. And the clip from your video was in that. So that was 2017. And since then, we haven't been able to do a festival, but we've done smaller projects that have still been really meaningful. We did an incubator project where we awarded funds and rehearsal space to 5 artists or 6 artists, I'm forgetting now. And we had a showing in at Medgar Evers College Prep School, again, allowing the community to come and see what we were doing. And we've done various masterclass series centering various Caribbean dance forms. Rose, you've taught for us with Guyana Masquerade. We've had Afro-Cuban, Afro-Brazilian. I'm forgetting all of the styles right now, but
it's a lot that you've done.
It's a lot, right? But I think the main thing was the fact that there was so much Caribbean cultural practices, so many Caribbean cultural practices that were being kept alive in New York that didn't have enough visibility and didn't have enough traction. And so that part of the project was really to amplify all of the work that was already happening, but that a lot of people didn't have access to.
Yeah, generally speaking, keeping art forms alive is a challenge, generally speaking. I feel that those of us, individuals and organizations that we are part of, have to really work extra hard to keep this alive, keep the art forms alive, the various art forms. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier was that when I mentioned culture, I'm talking about how these art forms are passed down from generation to generation. And it's not easy doing this as an immigrant or as immigrants in the United States of America.
Yeah.
because many immigrant families are here. The children have become distant from the parents' Caribbean culture, and it's quite a challenge to get those children to really latch on, get an interest. But I also get a really good laugh around Labor Day, right? When the Caribbean children, the Caribbean offsprings, have their bandanas, right? Repping for their countries, hanging out of their back pockets, and they adopt the dialect for one day because they want to be a part of. But if you can think of a challenge that you've experienced in doing your work as an immigrant artist, as an immigrant advocate for the arts, what would it be?
I mean, there are a lot. There are a lot. One is that, you know, when as an immigrant, you're already facing so many different challenges, just in terms of having your material needs met, in terms of dealing with immigration policies and, you know, who have their papers, who gets in their papers, if you're working under the table, all of these things that you're trying to navigate. You know, if you have family back home, you're dealing with that. If you have work, you know, what is the type of work that you do? How many hours do you work a week? So I think the fact that there's so many like systemic burdens that immigrant families and immigrant people are facing, that it sometimes becomes hard to feel like, you know, sending your child to a dance class is going to be important, right? If you have to choose between work and, you know, buying a costume for the end of your show, like, you know, which one will win out? So I think that, for one, that's one of the challenges, is just the fact that people are just under so much pressure. It's hard already to live here as an immigrant.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the kind of, unless you have a home where you, as the head of the household or whoever, prioritizes creating cultural experiences within your home, or having time to do those kind of things, you know, sit down and tell stories, or, you know, dance in your living room, or whatever those things are. If you are not like creating the space for that, then, you know, the kids grow up however they grow up. They, you know, if they're in a school where they have access to those things, then it's great. Or if they're in other kind of community organizations, then they do. But if not, then I think it's just tough. And I also, as much as sometimes it's frustrating when you're the one on the artist side trying to, you know, convince your community to take it seriously, it's also, you also can't beat people up for making choices that relate to survival, right? So they have to do what they have to do.
Yeah. You know, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would say the second point would be also the fact that I think, well, one, we don't have the same kind of access to resources. And so, you know, we tend to judge I would say, like, let's say in the Caribbean community, we tend to judge what we have against what mainstream organizations and maybe Eurocentric cultural organizations have. It's like, oh, you know, New York City Ballet, they have a whole theater, you know, Lincoln Center, blah, blah, blah. Why don't we have something like that? But one, there's a reason why. You know what I mean? There are lots of reasons why that we don't have those things. And we can't, to some extent, we also can't kill ourselves trying to match what they have, because that's not real. Do you know what I mean? That's money from 3 families that has been passed down, and we also know why those 3 families have that money. Do you know what I mean? I'm not calling any particular names, but I'm just saying that this is how it works, like how philanthropy works, so, you know, the kind of big splashy cultural representations that are mainstream in New York City are big and splashy for a reason. And so that we have to do the best with what we have. So I'm not saying that we should not be supporting those that are creating symbolic, like big, large symbolic representations of our culture that we need to kind of keep ourselves going, right? We need those representations to remind ourselves that there's a bigger purpose, right? We have to stay connected. Like, we are all connected through these practices that we have in common. So we need those things. But I think one is those like material conditions, those material challenges, and then two is the fact that we strive for things not realizing what they why those people have those things that they have.
And this is a variation on the things that you said, but if there is lack of consistency, if there is inconsistency in our communities, which happens because there's so many roadblocks, there are so many challenges, it's easy to become inconsistent. I think once there is consistency, there is hope. I would like to think so, right? I would like to think so, because what's important also is working with what you have, right?
Yeah.
And not try to go beyond your capabilities. And I think for non-for-profit organizations that really do not have big donors and are not being seen by those rich philanthropists, it's so much of a struggle within the communities to get the visibility in the community, because you're just like a speck, you know, you're just like a speck on the wall. So it's so much effort, but nonetheless, I applaud the many non-for-profit organizations that are doing this work. And it's a thankless job. You know, one of the things we say in social work is that it's a thankless career, because individuals, oh, please don't come get me. Individuals who have an MBA make a lot more than somebody with an MSW. You know, we actually say that. And I think the preservation of our culture, the artists, whether you're on the side that you're planning events or you're performing, let's get started with performances and the cheap performances that that contractors want. And when I say cheap performances, I mean they don't want to pay for the performance. They would think of it like just a little dance, you know, just a little dance, that's all. There's so many different pieces that we need to be considerate of. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation so we can heighten the awareness of some of the challenges that are faced in the arena. So did you want to say something?
I think,
go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I love what you said about, you know, we're like a speck in terms of trying to reach our own communities, even though we're there to some extent, right? And in a sense, what some of these organizations and some of the, you know, our artists try to do is basically become a kind of buffer against the mainstream outside world, right? That is sending a lot of messages to our communities that don't serve us.
Yeah.
Right. And so that you grew up with these kind of images that basically tell you you're not good enough, or tell you that your culture is strange, or tell you that, you know, and so you grew up with this kind of internalized challenge between, you know, being who you are, but then trying to fit in, and this idea of assimilation and all these pressures. And so that, you know, our organizations are basically trying to get in between those messages and what we know the strength of our community to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm just saying, kind of piggybacking on what you mentioned, but just that our cultural organizations basically play a really critical role. And even though the work is hard and thankless and there isn't enough funding, which is a whole other conversation.
Yes.
But still very necessary.
Yep. And what is critical too, with what we both are saying, is the importance of educating the public. That's really critical, educating the public. And hopefully, you know, with this platform, we're doing that. So let's take a break and we'll watch another piece of your performance. All right, so we'll be back in a few.
Kendall K. Williams.
Yo, is it? Are you kidding me?
Kendall K. Williams.
All right. Wow. I was moving and grooving with that one, Candace. You know, that one was really special. I thought about the freedom of being out there, you know, on this big open space. Where was it? Where was it filmed?
This was filmed right outside, right opposite Mark Morris Dance Center, where that new high-rise building is, 300 Ashland. So right in that open space that they have,
Okay. I thought I recognized it. I love the freedom of being in the community. People just passing by, doing their own thing, you know, some didn't even look back, but there you were. And the melding of your dance with the panist and you playing off with each other. Who is the panist?
Kendall K. Williams. So he's a well-known, pan
and he's
arranger. He's born here, but of Trinidadian heritage. But he's also doing a lot of work. He's in a PhD program, I think at Princeton. Okay. Trying to write his dissertation on pan. So he's doing a lot of work.
Wow, really, really nice. And a few pieces. He was born here. I'm thinking he has Trinidadian heritage, right?
Yep, sure. Right? Yes, he does.
You're Trinidadian. He is playing a Jamaican song. You're dancing to this Jamaican song, you know, and that's the thing about our culture. We appreciate each other so much because, you know what, in more than so many cases, we're one. We're one. So that was really, really sweet. We'll talk about your educational journey also later on when it comes to this whole arts field. So tell us a little bit about Contempo Carib. It's Carib or Carib?
Carib is how I pronounce it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my choreographic project. I started choreographing, I guess in the more traditional sense of the word, for choreographing for stage around 2013, 2014. And the first piece that I made, what was it called? Of Circles and Bright Colors. And basically I made it about my experiences as a Caribbean person. And I think from that moment, I mean, and that's really the thing that spurred me on to create Dance Caribbean Collective. And so Contempo Carib was the way that I have approached a lot of the choreographic projects that I've done since, which is just like my way of researching more about my heritage and more about different cultural practices within the Caribbean, and then using them as material to make different creative projects. So yeah, I've done a few. This is the latest one. I did this one last year. And it was just, I just loved his work, and I reached out to him. I was like, hey, did you ever think about, you know, doing a collaboration with a dancer? He's like, no, I've always wanted to, so let's do it. So we did. I had been just like improvising to the song for a long time. I just like rent studio space and improvise to the song. The whole piece is really, that whole thing you saw is improvised. But you know, it's like I rehearsed the improvisation for months. And then of course, you know, when you edit the video, I also like put certain pieces together, so there's some kind of choreography happening in the editing process. But yeah, my work with Contempo Carib was just, I think, my way of looking back at my past and the things that I know that make me, or the things that I believe make me Caribbean, and looking back at their histories and then finding ways to make those histories more visible in our contemporary culture. So the things that we see in pop culture, you know, where do they stem from? Where do they come from? And how have they morphed to their present, I don't know, appearance? So Yeah.
You know what I'm visualizing just seeing this piece, believe it or not?
Mm-hmm.
I am visualizing a whole steel band group, a big one, you know,
Yeah.
performing at a group of like 20, 25 dancers dancing
Mm-hmm.
steel band music, some ballet of some sort. I'm planting a seed here. I'm planting a seed here, Candace.
Yes.
You know, I think you could do it. I really think you could do it because I think it would be projects like those, in addition to the ones that you're doing, would bring visibility to our culture because we have to continue being keepers of culture, of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the steel pan is being called so many different names around the world, depending on where you look.
Mm-hmm.
And has taken off in Asia, you know,
Right.
and the music is just as sweet as if you listen to a Caribbean panist playing.
Right.
And I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen, but what I'm saying is, with us continuing to practice our culture,
Mm-hmm.
the way that we know it, we can continue to lead the educational processes on how our
Yeah.
culture develops. I know that
Yep.
there are many individuals who take risks. They're not of Caribbean heritage, but guess what? They do Caribbean work, and I applaud
Mm-hmm.
them. But then again, I believe that if we are not doing enough of our own work, then other people will do it for us. We see it in our
Yep.
history books, whereby
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
our stories are not being told by
Yep.
us.
Yep.
They're being told
Mm-hmm.
by others. So I want to take a moment to applaud you for the work that you're doing, because what you're doing is putting our work out there historically in many different forms, including the history books, because I know that somebody just finished a thesis. And
Who that is? Who's that?
I don't know. I don't know. But I know somebody just finished the thesis. And that somebody's name is, I think her name is Candace Thompson Zachery. And I think
Something so.
Wesleyan or one of those schools, you know, but I was recently a part of a project that I felt compelled to be a part of because
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that the story that was being told is a Guyanese folktale in addition to other
Mm-hmm.
folktales. I want to make
Yeah.
sure that the Guyanese folktale was being told the way it should be told, not based on an
Yeah.
interpretation. And although I was there, guess what? I could tell you the end
What?
product was not what it should have been because of
Right.
discomfort that you mentioned earlier. You know, there is a discomfort when there is the unknown. So there is more work to be done with that project. But, you know, it just got me
Yeah.
how important it is for us to be a part of what we, a part to share who we are, to share who we are
Yeah.
and become a part of that evolving process that the piece will go through when we talk about creating
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
choreography or just creating a song or doing a collaboration between the pan and the body. Mind you, I said the pan and the body.
Yeah.
You know, that's really critical.
Yeah.
I wanted us to talk a little bit about some of, I know you've hosted panels, and I
Yep.
want you to
Yep.
speak a little bit to that because
Yep.
you're really studying dance on such a different level. I want you to speak to the pieces that the panels that you have created, the conferences that you've created,
Mm-hmm.
that you're part of, and the work that you continue to do educationally when it comes to dance in the arts.
Yeah. It's funny that you should bring up your work on that project and the fact that, you know, even though you were there, the way it turned out wasn't necessarily like the way that you would have wanted it to turn out. And one of the first panel discussions that I hosted was on cultural appropriation. This was in 2017 as well. And because there was just so many things that were popping up at the time, and it felt, I mean, it's always a necessary conversation, to be honest. Let's be real. But that was one of the first ones that I held. And so I started doing that work through Dance Caribbean Collective because, as much as the performances and the classes are needed, what's also needed, like, we're saying, is the room for us to discuss some of these issues and make visible the kinds of, I guess, predicaments that we end up in, right? And to talk through the challenges that exist when we as cultural practitioners are trying to do our work, the kinds of, I guess, like power struggles, really, because that's what it comes down to, right? It's like, who's the person with the power, with the platform, with the resources to weave a different story, or weave a story that's in their benefit, right? So that if they have the power, the story that's being told is not necessarily one that's going to favor us. And that part of our constant, I guess, work, struggle, whatever, is to create our own platform so that we don't run into those blockages quite as often. Yeah. So that's that. But more recently, through the master's program that I just finished is a master's in performance curation, and most of the program is very flexible, so I'll say that. And so basically I used most of my projects to further investigate Caribbean culture through the lens of curatorial practice, which is basically the way that, in this case, we're talking about performance, but the way that you create context and present cultural and artistic projects. And again, because of the work that I've done with Dance Caribbean Collective and the kinds of experiences that I had had as a performer doing the kind of work that I do, I felt that there were, again, a lot of roadblocks that I was running into that I was just, they seem to come out of nowhere. It's just like you're doing your thing and you're like, okay, yeah, let me try and do it here. And then it's like, and this is, it's like roadblocks on all sides. It's like in the concert dance world, in the fitness world, in your own Caribbean community, in terms of visibility in the media, so in your families, right? So part of my work in the thesis program, and with the final thing that I presented, was on the fact that there's a history of presenting Caribbean dance in New York City, especially, that starts from before all of us, right? Like, I'm talking about in the 20s and 30s and 40s. There's a lot of things that happened that basically created a certain path or certain categories that Caribbean dance should fill. And anytime you try to step out of those, then you run into these problems, right? And so we're thinking about a lot of the research that I did pointed to the fact that Caribbean dance really became popular around the same time as the Harlem Renaissance, because African Americans were looking for representations of African culture to try to tie their vernacular to historic past in Africa, right? Because, at the time, the thing was, oh yeah, well, those Black people, they don't even have a history, they ain't shit, whatever, right? So a lot of the work that happened around that time was saying, no, we do have a very vibrant culture, and the culture that it's derived from is also vibrant and also has a very long history. Mm-hmm. And because folks weren't able to actually travel to Africa at first, the place they went was the Caribbean. And so that's why we have the Catherine Dunhams, right? We have the Pearl Primuses. Yep. And even Zora Neale Hurston, who we know as a writer, did a lot of cultural ethnographic work in the Bahamas. And so a lot of the first sort of like ethnographic material that producers and writers were working with were from Zora Neale Hurston's her set of work that she had collected, her field work. Mm-hmm. And so, so that's one way that Caribbean dance became popular. But then we also have to think about like the Harry Belafontes, that whole Calypso craze, right? And so you had him, and even, that there are a lot of Caribbean folks around that time who would say, but what he was singing was really not Calypso, let's be real, right? So it's like his way of making it a more appeal to mainstream audiences, right? So we have that kind of like exotified way of presenting himself or presenting calypso so that it could be more open to mainstream audiences. And then of course, so then if you tell people that this is calypso, they gonna believe it, right? Yeah. And we know that it's much more than the kind of things that he was doing. And not, again, not to throw shade on him, he did what he had to do, and he also created and opened doors for more things to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And then we also have to think about the development of the West Indian American Day Carnival, which again came from balls that were happening in the 20s and 30s that turned into what we were able to have on Eastern Parkway, mm-hmm. which has developed over the years. Like what we have now was not always possible, right? So there are a lot of things, and I'll wrap this up because I know I've been going on for a while, but in other words, there are a lot of ways that Caribbean dance came to be in New York that have made certain associations for ourselves as Caribbean people and for other communities in terms of how they view it, right? So they view it as something exotic. They view it as something to some extent over-sexualized. They view it as something that is for pure entertainment. That's fluff in a sense, that's frivolous. And so when you try to do something different with Caribbean dance, mm-hmm. right? Like Caribbean dance as a spiritual practice, Caribbean dance as an experimental form, Caribbean dance as a form that is intellectually stimulating, people are just like, wait, what? Huh? Y'all do that? Oh, I thought y'all let's just jump up. I thought y'all let's just whine.
Right, yeah.
So yeah. A lot of the work that I've done in the last few years has been about unpacking the broad aspect or the broad nature of Caribbean dance, of its culture, and then also just lifting up the work that a lot of people are doing in the community. So, the last panel that you were on with my project, which is called Caribbean the Future, is about looking ahead to see, well, what will Caribbean culture look like considering the kind of world that we live in now? Mm-hmm. Right, so there's that, and then there have been a few other things that I was involved in a Caribbean theater project with French Caribbean playwrights putting on a stage reading festival last November, and then there's another one that I'm forgetting right now. But basically, that's kind of like where my intellectual or academic focus is on, just like this idea of broadening our associations with what Caribbean dance is, and then also broadening the places that it can be.
Nice. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Candace Thomas Zachery, who holds a Master of Arts in Performance Curation. She just graduated from the Institute of Curatorial Performance Practice, and that is at the Wesleyan University. And she is also the manager of Justice, Equity, and Inclusion initiatives at Dance NYC, which is a non-for-profit umbrella organization for dance in New York City. We'll take a break from Candace, give her a chance to
catch my breath.
And then we'll come back. In the break, we'll watch one of her performances.
One more.
Candace, I think I just lost like the 10 pounds that I've been home through, you know, the whole stay home thingy. I think I've lost 10 pounds watching. Yeah.
Just watching. Oh, Lord.
Oh my goodness, the energy. Love it, love it, love it. I also made an observation. Made an observation that there might have been quite a few people in that group who are not Caribbean. Am I right?
Yes, true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of those folks were some of like my biggest supporters. When I ran that class for about 4 years, they would be there every week, being like, "All right, Candace, what are we doing today?"
Right.
So
you know what? I want to tag that on to something you mentioned earlier: affordability. Not many of us are able to put aside money for a dance class, for an exercise class, for gym classes.
You're right.
You know, so it's reflected there also. And
yeah, that's true.
I wanted to just tag this before I have another question that I have in mind for you about the whole funding piece. You did at how, because of funding, some works are created and or received a particular way because of funding. Let's talk to that a bit, because that's very, very important in preservation of the arts.
Yes, I think if you really look at the arts field, and I'm gonna preface all this by saying the opinions I'm about to share are my own.
Okay.
Right? Just to clarify that. But if we look at the arts field as a broad field, the things that are able to shout the loudest are the things that have funding, the things that people with resources believe are important or believe can make them money. Do you know what I mean? So it's by no surprise that some productions or some companies are able to produce at a certain level, have, you know, excessive production quality in their shows and excessive marketing budgets and PR budgets, and others don't. It's by no surprise. And so part of what I had to learn as a producer is that, one, like what I said in the beginning, I have to make what I can with what I have, one, and that two, we don't need, to some extent, and now again, this is me, to me, there's no need for a big flashy show every weekend, right? We don't need it. Like, if we go back to what we were saying before, we have other things that we need to take care of, right? We need to make sure our elders are taken care of. We got money for when we retire. We could take care of the kids, whatever. And so, because of the strength of our practices, our cultures, right? Things like Carnival, to some extent, don't cost money. It don't cost money to show up on the street and chip with a band, right? Even though that has its own hierarchy, and that's a whole other tangent we could go down into in terms of how Carnival's been commercialized. But part of the beauty, I think, of Caribbean culture is the fact that it is so participatory, and there's so many things that we can do without a stage, right? Like, me and you could meet up tomorrow in my living room and we could have a whole thing.
That's right.
We don't need a big stage. So I think it's also, one is to understand that the things that are big and large for a reason. And two, that part of our work, part of our work then is to make everyone realize that things are being shared in inequitable ways, right? So let's just be clear that this ain't fair, right? Y'all have a lot too much and a lot of us don't have enough. So that things need to be redistributed so that more communities have access to resources to create symbolic representations that speak to their heritages through their own eyes. So that's two. And then three, we also need to disabuse ourselves that we need to keep up. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
We don't need to keep up. That's part of keeping up is why the world is moving as fast as it is. Like we don't need that, right? We can invest in certain things, and then we also need to not. We need to just dance with our neighbors, or you know what I mean? Have a family gathering and enjoy ourselves. Like
We're
you
doing it
don't
right
need
now.
exactly, and that's to some extent that's the beauty of this moment, even though there are a lot of issues with this moment, but it's the fact that people are looking inward.
Yeah. The another
So
piece I want to go ahead. Go ahead, Candace. Sorry.
no, that was it.
Okay. Because another piece that I am passionate about, and it's a thread in what you're saying, has to do with how, because you're getting funding from a particular source, your work has to look a particular way. It has to be texturized a particular way so that it's
Mm,
appealing to this segment of the population.
mm-hmm.
And what happens there is
Yep.
a lot of the watering down of our culture. And I
Yep.
think with collaborations, I truly believe in collaborations. I believe that with collaborations, that barrier can be broken because there is always strength in a group. I truly believe that. So you've recently
Mm-hmm.
completed your master degree in performance curation, I mentioned. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, given your recency of graduation, how does and your recent appointment also as the manager of Justice, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives at Dance NYC, how
Mm-hmm.
how have those recent important events in your life fit with the impact of COVID-19? I had to go there.
Right. Huh.
COVID-19 on the arts, pretty much,
Yeah.
COVID-19 on the arts.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm still processing that one. Well, my degree program is a distance program, so it's not like I was going to classes every day and then all of a sudden I had to stay home. We only meet 3 times a year, so in a sense that didn't really change the nature of me writing, like finishing the thesis and submitting. That would have been the same regardless of COVID or not.
Right. But I'm talking about
So
the whole education that you harnessed.
right,
Yeah.
yes. Mm-hmm.
How-
Yeah, the because in a sense what happened was, once I finished the document, I realized that I had written the document for a world that didn't exist anymore, right? So I was critiquing all of these practices, and also thinking about the future and what we could do, but I'm also thinking about a future that is probably not possible anymore, or is going to be drastically different. And so towards, like, in my conclusion, I kind of gestured towards what could possibly happen next. But I think that I'm also still thinking about the ideas and the kind of research that I did, and thinking about how they will live in the world post-COVID. Because you know I'm I'm probably still gonna be whole. Basically, let's put it this way: if the state does reopen soon, I don't see myself being motivated to show up anywhere with a lot of people. I don't. So to me, that seems that things like theater and things like live performances and mass gatherings aren't going to be happening for a while, right? And so, because dance to some extent relies on us getting together and being in close proximity, the nature of whatever that will be will change.
Mhm.
And we've already seen how people are adapting. There's a lot happening in digital spaces, things like Zoom and Zoom parties and performances, and people making dance films. Me and my husband made it. Well, he really made the film. I was just in it. Um, since we've been in quarantine. And so, yeah, I think we're all trying to figure out what is possible now, and then also what will be possible going forward.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are talking about the fact that, at least everywhere I've been reading has been like, what was working in the past wasn't really working. So what we shouldn't be looking forward to just going back to normal. We got to think about something new. And I agree. We do need to reimagine what all of these things look like.
We will be forced.
And also, sorry?
We will be forced to, with what's going on.
We will be forced to. Yeah. And I think that in a way, again, another thing about this moment is the fact that the rat race has had to stop for certain people, has had to stop. And so that people actually have time to reflect. You know what I mean? There's a way that when you're caught up in the hamster wheel, there's no time to think about something else. You just got to keep going. There's no time to be like, what about if I went backwards? What about if I turned sideways? What about, there's no time. And I think that one of the things that has been afforded to some people, not everybody, is the fact that there is time now to slow down and think about another way that we can be together. So,
well, I just want to slip this one in only because you led me there. You nicely dropped your husband, Andre. And hi, Andre, if you're listening. I know you're listening. Not if you're listening, hi. I know that the two of you have done some really, really good work together. And thank you for hinting that I have to talk with him to come on also and talk about his show. And that's my interpretation. So, you didn't say, but that's my interpretation, right?
Yes, yes.
I would love to have him come on. You said you guys did something in the space during quarantine. What was that you guys created? If you could tell us.
Oh yeah, he made a short film. It's like 2 minutes long, maybe 3. What is the name of the film? And I'm forgetting the name of the film right now. But anyway, I could send it to you separately. But yeah, he made a film. Literally, we made it on our fire escape.
Okay.
And he shot basically my hands dancing to a song called Grandma's Hands, the Bill Withers song. And then there's
that's all I know.
Yeah. And a clip to dancing to another song by Fugees called Masked. So yeah, we did a short film. He submitted it for like a online festival basically. So yeah, like he made that happen. And he's been doing stuff, playing around with the technology and film and stuff. But yeah.
But listen to that. If you guys were not in quarantine, you probably wouldn't even be thinking about putting films, putting music to you sitting on the fire escape and doing a hand movements to Grandma's hands. Look at the difference. And it speaks bigger than what's happening now. It speaks to a different appreciation of dance, right? Because, for example, the clip we just looked at, right? There was a way that you were using your arms, waving with the bandana. There is some artistic quality, aesthetic quality in which that is done. Like the way you use your hand to make that short film. And I'm saying all of that to say, it takes training. You can't just get up and throw your hands up and think that you're dancing, and I think that's so critical that as dancers, we understand that we can use different body parts. I'm getting to a point here. One of the things you mentioned is that, the Caribbean style of dancing is like quite free and frivolous, and people don't understand that you have to know the parts of your body to make sure certain parts move when they're supposed to move, and not certain parts moving with other parts to distort movement. I'll give you a quick laugh and then we'll take a break. It's a quick joke. I think this happened last year. Oh my gosh, I did a performance last year, and I really think I've hung up my dance shoes now. And it showed my modern dance training. Forward, I was going to an event, a Guyanese event, and somebody saw me outside of the event, and she said to me something like, "Girl, I didn't know you could dance like that," right? So I was shocked, right? I was shocked when she said that, and then she said something like, I got to dance like that. I got to dance like that. No, what dance school you went to?" So this is the conversation. I kind of knitted my brow and was really taken aback. One of my girlfriends who I've danced with in the past was outside. So I said, "Ask her, she's going to tell you." She said, "Well, I thought all you could do is just wind up." And that's when the conversation ended, right? I just left her and said, "We'll talk later." But I was so chuckling because sometimes when people don't know your range as a performer, you know, they kind of pigeonhole you, put you in a box and figure that it's only this that you can do. So for example, individuals who are only able to see you doing your dance workshops to Caribbean music, right? That involve a lot of pelvic movements or other body parts with some gyration. And I'm using the right words so that that individuals can understand that there is a word for everything that we do. It's not just winding up, you know. It's a lot more than that, because to wind up, if you want to put it in that sense, you have to know how to move your hips, or know where to find your hips, and don't move your knees instead of your hips, you know? Anyways, let's take a break. That was my little rambling of a story, but let's take a break and we'll come back and talk some more. And we're heading down the home stretch. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're sitting here with Candace, Thompson, Zachery, who is a staunch dance advocate in New York City. So we'll take a break and come back with Candace some more. All right, we'll get a little more of Candace just now. Candace,